But for our next talk, I want to bring on our next speaker, and we're going to talk about how we can use trusted execution environments to make rollups a lot more flexible and secure and do better signing. And while we get set up here, I'm going to introduce Orest from T1 Protocol. And you're going to get to learn a lot of cool things about secure compute and faster transactions. So please give Orest a big round of applause.
I wanted to see a quick show of hands. How many people around here are familiar with the acronym TEE, Trusted Execution Environment? Okay, like half of the audience. That's interesting, very cool. And how many of you would be able to define the term RTP, real-time proving? Anyone? Like barely a few hands, I see. Okay, cool, interesting. So thank you for giving me this input. I see our slides should be visible now, so I wanted to give you a quick teaser into what we mean by real-time proving. And so the problem I would like to address and give you a bit of guidance into is what I call the rollup fragmentation problem in Ethereum. As you might know, there has been this rollup scaling roadmap ever since the early days of Ethereum, but most recently, maybe 3 years ago, something that has been on the agenda for many people, for many researchers, and for many projects. So who of you is familiar with the rollup scaling roadmap? Okay, also like maybe a third of the audience. That bodes well. Okay, cool. So let me tell you about what I mean by the rollup fragmentation problem. Now, we want to basically give you a bit of an outlook, a bit of context into how the challenges that we are seeing today came to be. There has been this issue, maybe in the DeFi summer, very visible, that the transaction fees on the L1 of Ethereum have been skyrocketing. Like as soon as a slight bit of interest came to be, we noticed that the block space is limited and that the throughput is limited, and this resulted in market forces playing out and the transaction fees going as high as though to make a simple swap cost $100. Now, that is, of course, unbearable. And so what people started working on were rollups, which is to say off-chain components that take on the burden of executing some subset of the tasks of the transactions that people want to execute, and then find a way to convince Ethereum about the new state of this off-chain component. Now, there's basically two big ways how Ethereum can be convinced. The first one is called optimistic rollups, optimistic fraud proofs, and the other one is zero-knowledge proofs. Now, the problem with those is that an optimistic fraud challenge period is required in order for an honest actor in the ecosystem to submit something that we call a challenge, where an optimistic rollup may be rolled back to a previous state because there was indeed something that should not have happened. Now, because of cryptoeconomic reasons, this is required to be relatively long. Like in our case, like nowadays, it's like 7 days for most optimistic rollups. And with ZK rollups, there's actually a technical and economic challenge, which is that coming up with this zero-knowledge proof of computation is a couple of orders of magnitude slower and more expensive than the native compute itself, than reproducing the compute, which is the default in L1. Now, what this means in practice is that Arbitrum and Optimism and co. have been around for a while, and they have been able to attract a lot of usage and liquidity. But as soon as you put your ETH or your USDC on such a rollup, you are kind of stuck with it. It's pretty hard to actually get out of it again. So for optimistic, 7 days. For ZK rollups nowadays, this is on the order of hours, and it actually varies. Now, why this is that it's on the order of hours? Like some people would say, well, but there's all of those advancements in zero-knowledge proving, and there's all of the work being done with ASICs and hardware acceleration, and people like Scroll, my previous employer, is promising us a finality of 2 minutes by the end of the year. Yeah, some people are saying that, and yet nowadays, if you go and look at the Block Explorer, you will see, for instance, the big ZK rollups will be submitting zero-knowledge proofs maybe once an hour. This is still a burden for people. Like if you go and bridge your funds to a ZK EVM rollup, you can't just do your swap and use the resulting transactions outputs to take out a loan on another rollup. You actually need to go back and bridge and wait for an hour or two and hope that there's not going to be a problem with that. And so my point is Ethereum's rollup scaling roadmap has been successful when it comes to scaling the transaction cost and speed. What we are still missing, though, is scaling as in having this shared layer, this shared system where we get to play with those Lego building blocks of DeFi and whatnot that Ethereum actually used to promise and deliver a few years ago before the onset of usage came into play. And so that is something that I'd like to talk about more, like how can we fulfill this second part of what I call still scalability, which is keeping those desirable properties of composability whilst accepting more users. And so how can we achieve composability? How can we achieve this universal component, a universal network, without sacrificing scalability? The situation currently is that most users, even though there are those rollup solutions around, are not really using rollups. And if you go by active users, you will see, well, if we combine all of the top rollups, I think 6 or 7, there's only 13% of Ethereum users active in a month or so who would actually use rollups as well. This is, of course, a limited analysis. This does not include people who enter through a rollup first, but this is the best we've got currently. And so we want to fix that. Now, how can we fix it? Well, there's something called real-time proving that I mentioned before. And now real-time proving would be the ability to convince the underlying base layer, such as Ethereum L1, about the new state of an off-chain component, such as a ZK rollup, with a delay that's less than the delay of producing an Ethereum block, 12 seconds currently. And so when people are talking about ZK getting fast, this is what the context is. The context is coming up with a zero-knowledge proof of something comparable to an Ethereum block in a matter of few seconds. And from that, unfortunately, we are very far away currently. But there's hope. And the hope is we can make a form of real-time proving possible today. And that hope is made possible via trusted execution environments. Now, whenever you hear the word TEEs, well, you instantly see people point you to sgx.fail and say, well, but TEEs are insecure. And this is a very valid point. You are only as secure as the hardware that protects this private key material that the TEE is made to protect, and it has, of course, its limits. Just like ZKP algorithms have their limits and bugs and threat models and so on. And so what we need in a situation like Ethereum's is a system that's slightly more sophisticated, unfortunately, and that adds layers of defense on top of the TEE in a way that makes it possible to still leverage the super low latency that a TEE enables. A TEE enables coming up with a proof of integrity within a negligible delay, let's say milliseconds. Like it's maybe from my benchmarks, it's a 5% performance hit over native compute. Compare that to what, like 100,000% of ZKP. But we want to combine that with additional layers of security in order to not be limited by the cost that is needed in order to break into a TEE. And so one way of doing that is adding in cryptoeconomic security. One idea to do that is to use staked ETH with a restaking solution such as AVS by EigenLayer and have some sort of double assurance where parties involved in computing those TEE integrity proofs are also required to have opted in to be slashed under additional slashing conditions. And a further security increasing measure that you can conceive is actually leaning on ZKPs, but in a different way than we've been doing so far. One idea, just to try to work on our imagination, would be, well, how about we only require a zero-knowledge proof for things that, for transactions that exceed the value that, for instance, the underlying AVS, actively validated service by EigenLayer, is secured up to. So maybe we can have those 3 tiers of security, like number 1, TEE, cost of breaking 1 million. Then for stuff that's more important, like more valuable, we have AVS. Maybe the restaked stake is 1 billion. And then if someone actually does want to do this 2 billion withdrawal, they will not be able to do so without also submitting a zero-knowledge proof on top of the other 2 security layers. So that is basically an idea how we can still leverage the advantages of TEEs that have this super low latency whilst securing ourselves against attacks where the attacker is actually able to break into the TEE. So now let us think about how we can get there, how we can achieve a system like that. We've refreshed a little bit of a user flow walkthrough in the diagram that you should be able to see now. And I'd like to walk you through the different roles and layers there. Imagine you are a user. What you can do in this T1 proposal of ours is you can deposit your funds on Ethereum L1 into the T1 deposit contract. And then almost instantly will T1 become aware of that. And once that's happened, can you just change your wallet RPC and use our L2 as though it was any other L2. In that moment, there's one novelty going on, and that is the transaction that you will be sending to T1 will be partially encrypted. So certain fields, for instance, the limit order parameters or the direction of the swap, will be encrypted to the public key of the TEE-enabled workers. But they will not go to the workers. Instead, they will go to the sequencer AVS. And those sequencers, they will not be able to decrypt the entirety of your transaction. However, they will be able to order such partially encrypted transactions into a block and create this finalized block ordering. Next, the AVS sequencers will carry this finalized block and give it to the second AVS type in T1, which is the worker AVS, together with the proof of sequencing consensus. Now, the second role, the worker AVS, these guys they have, obviously, the private key connotated with the TEE worker pub key. And so they are able to decrypt the encrypted fields of the partially encrypted user transaction that the user originally shared with the sequencers. And this enables them to execute this block and come up with a new state, including the new state root. And so they are not able to change the ordering within the block. They are not able to extract MEV that way. Now, those workers, they will proceed to take this new state and also the transaction data together with the previously received sequencing consensus proof, and they will put their execution proof next to it. The execution proof being a technically trivial ECDSA signature that comes with an overhead of negligible, like 5% over native compute. That's why this is actually possible in sub-Ethereum block time. Now, those ingredients are going to be making their way now to Ethereum, to the Canonical bridge, or to the Ethereum DA when it comes to the transaction data. And in this moment, Ethereum will be aware of the new, will verify, of course, the proofs. And then once these pass the checks, the Ethereum Canonical bridge 41 will be aware of the new state of T1 and will therefore be willing to accept proofs from users that a given, for instance, withdrawal transaction was indeed part of this newly computed and proven T1 state accepted by Ethereum. And this, again, is possible within a single Ethereum block's worth of delay, 12 seconds, and therefore the user is able to use the funds almost instantly. An additional element here that I hinted at just briefly is this bespoke ZKP, bespoke zero knowledge proof component that basically prevents an attacker who is as powerful as though to be able to control the underlying AVS stake from stealing more money than the AVS stake budget itself, as in the withdrawal that would touch a higher amount than the AVS stake will not be accepted by the Ethereum Canonical bridge instantly, and instead the bridge will halt and require a zero knowledge proof to resume operations. This is to prevent this very sophisticated attack, and we expect this to only happen very rarely. Now, finally, there's this cool feature of TEEs that you are able to also run full nodes tapping into other rollups, partner rollups, such as it could be the Ethereum, it could be the Arbitrum sequencers. And such a full node would be following the chain and therefore able to know for sure that no fraud is going on in a given block for a given optimistic rollup, and therefore provide T1 apps with the ability to look into, for instance, Arbitrum's state and act upon it without having to wait for the 7-day challenge period, whilst giving this assurance that there is no fraud going on indeed. So this is what we mean by partner rollups and how we envision expanding towards a cross-chain vision soon. And so this is how we hope to be able to incrementally approach this vision of what some people like to call the United Chains of Ethereum. And now I would like to show you, or try to show you, if the demo gods are with us today, a inaugural demo of our Devnet that our two founding engineers, KSS and Wojciech, were so kind to prepare just 2 hours ago. So let's see if that works. And let's see if we can make it happen. What I'm going to do now is I will be showing you the interaction from a user's perspective. And now let's assume, of course, like this is crypto, so the user is a developer, and so you will be using Remix. And let us assume that this contract that we prepared, that is called counter.sol right now, this could be any interaction on the T1 layer 2. And so I have deployed the contract here. You can see it's called counter.sol, and it has this very trivial logic of exposing an ability to increment a counter. Now, this contract is deployed at the address over here, 0xb4b blah, blah, blah. And I'm able to connect my MetaMask. I'm using the injected MetaMask provider with a pre-loaded account with a lot of ETH. And I'm able to call this public method, and I'm receiving a response over here that I'm able to make bigger. Great. So this is the current state of this contract, of this counter. And in parallel, given the fact we don't have a block explorer deployed yet, I'm just running a simple watcher function that monitors for the state of T1 on our make-believe L1. So the state of the L2 as per the canonical bridge deployed to something like Ethereum. And this is refreshing every 2 seconds. Right now, you can see, and this is refreshing continuously, that our current state is this 94449 blah, blah, blah hash. And what I'm going to try and pray it works now is I'm going to increment this counter on this T1 native dApp. I'm going to sign and confirm this transaction in my MetaMask connected to T1, so that is an L2. It seems to have passed, and now, voila, you can see literally 2 seconds later, the underlying base layer is updated, and a new state is accepted on this canonical bridge contract, which means that from this moment on, anyone is able to come up to this canonical bridge contract and have a proof in the hand how to get from a given transaction that they claim is part of T1 and get to the state root that you can see over here. Okay, so now, finally, I would like to call out to any builders that we might have around here and invite you to an exclusive private group with our founding engineers and very early developers in order to build with us. We will be very happy to support you. We will be very happy to also discuss your needs and take your feedback. So feel free to scan this QR code and join the group. Other than that, feel free to follow us on X. The handle is T1 Protocol, and DMs are open. Thank you very much.